Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Kanchi Shah, and it gives me immense pleasure in welcoming you all to today's webinar on accelerating value, optimization, and innovation with hybrid cloud. I welcome you on behalf of Dell Technologies, Ingram Micro, and Strategic. Ladies and gentlemen, how organizations cloud now is set to define and align the transformation across industries. In this, business agility or the need for speed from IT is the most important trigger factor for considering a multi cloud as opposed to cost and access to new functionality. With multi cloud, enterprises can increase agility, minimize vendor lock in, take advantage of best in breed solutions, improve cost efficiencies, and increase flexibility through choice. Most industry predictions state that within the next 18 to 24 months, majority of organizations will tend to rely on a mix of on-premise, dedicated private cloud, several public clouds, and legacy platforms to meet their infrastructure and data capability needs. The need for the hour is clearly for multi-hybrid cloud architectures that help organizations take control of their multi-cloud with a comprehensive multi-cloud management platform supported by a strong managed service backbone for data ingestion, connectivity, migration, application, and management. The keywords in this transformative digital economy are going to be hyperspeed and hyperscale. As organizations with complex IT environments, how then should CIOs and IT leaders plan this journey? What are the business needs, challenges, and the inflection of value that organizations seek in what promises to be truly disruption at scale? That's exactly what we're trying to answer with today's webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, we request you to address your questions to our speakers using the Q&A option on your screens. Also, towards the end of today's proceedings, we would request you to please fill in the feedback form. We'd love to hear your suggestions and feedback. This will help us enhance the structure, content, and delivery of our conferences. And with that, to kick off today's session with the first segment, which is a discussion on unlocking the future, I'd like to welcome Mr. Mariar Patel, Group CIO, Digital Solutions for Gina and Company. Mr. Amit Dhawan, CISO and DPO for Quantify. Mr. Tejveer Bogle, Head Governance, Analysis and PMO for Bennett Coleman and Company Limited. They are in a conversation with Mr. Arjun Vishwanathan, Chief Knowledge Officer, Strategy. Over to you, Arjun.
Hello and welcome. I'm Arjun Vishwanathan, and I extend a very warm welcome to each of you in this segment of our webinar, Accelerating Value, Optimization, and Innovation with Hybrid Cloud. It is a reality that how organizations cloud today is set to define and align the transformation across industries. In this, business agility or the need for speed from IT is the most important trigger factor for considering a multi-cloud or a hybrid cloud orchestration, as opposed to perhaps cost and access to new functionality. With hybrid cloud, enterprises can seize the opportunities to increase agility, minimize vendor lock-in, take advantage of best-in-breed solutions, improve cost efficiencies, and increase flexibility through choice. And to talk to me about all of this and much, much more, please join me in welcoming in no specific order, Mehriyar Patel, the CIO for Gina and Company. Mr. Patel, welcome, sir, and delighted.
Thank you very much for having me, Arjun. Delighted.
Amit Dhawan, Chief Information Security Officer, as well as a Data Protection Officer for Quantify. Amit, welcome, delighted and privileged.
Thank you, same here. I hope all are keeping well.
Indeed, sir. And last but certainly not the least, Tejveer Bogle, Head of Governance, Alliances and PMO at the Bennett and Coleman Group, which is the Times of India Group. Tejveer, welcome, sir.
Pleasure to be here, Arjun.
Great. Marianne, I'm going to come to you first for no specific reason, except for the fact that increasingly, we've seen over the last maybe 12 to 15 months that the rate of acceleration or rate of adoption of the overall concepts of hybrid cloud approaches have increased in significant measure. What, in your view, are the triggers for organizations opting for a hybrid cloud strategy?
So Arjun, to quickly to set the context, all these are business required relationships. So whenever we talk about any situation which leads to a technology architecture or a setup or what we plan to do, starts from what is the business requirement. I think that has come up in a very stringent ways in how do we do business better. In the last 18 to 20 months, we see that organizations have become light in what they adopt. When I say light, I see that no less headaches are internal. Headaches are outsourced, number one. Number two is that you choose the best and the most efficient and obviously in value in terms of ROI as to what you can deliver to business. That's why the word hybrid and the word of choice comes into our mind. So today, when I look at operating for my business, I would see that what are the best strategies and whom do I tie up in each of the ways. So I am maybe with say Azure platforms, I may be with Google's, and I may be with Tata Communications, or I may be with local private service providers. And it is set context into a situation saying that I will operate with all of these service providers because they offer me the best of the solutions.
It's actually fascinating, Maria, and thank you for supremely articulating that, because that's what I'm going to bring to you, Tejveer, is that quite often, and the whole concept of business requirements, a lot of buzzwords are touted when you talk about hybrid or multi-cloud. One is scale and one is agility. When you kind of translate that into real business terms, what, in your view, are the business objectives that are clear, sustainable, and measurable that call for an orchestration approach that is defined as a multi-cloud strategy?
I think from a business perspective, Arjun, the first thing that comes to my mind, which is clearly defined by the business, is how soon they want if it's a FMCG, how soon they want the product to be launched, how soon they want to really hit the market, what's the GTM timelines, what about the competition per se? All these aspects are some of those factors which define as to whether a cloud, number one, and if yes, then which partner. Okay, and that's where the technology team comes into the picture, because the partner evaluation, where we look at it, is which partner can deliver on the dot. Is there a vendor lock-in with that partner? Do we need to acquire skills, or will the partner be able to fulfill all our requirements on the word go, without any involvement from our end? So these are some of the factors which really help us define and derive as to which partner to align with, so that we can deliver this to the business.
Interesting, because Amit, I bring you the same question, of course, with a slight juxtapositioning of the fact that the whole concept of multi-cloud strategy or approaches or orchestrations is fundamental, in a manner of speaking, a workload transformation process. That workload transformation process increasingly today is fed by intelligence from data that organizations are generating in vast amounts. In that kind of a scenario, how do you see the security paradigm evolve, where workload transformation or repatriation of workloads from a public cloud to an on-prem or a private cloud kind of a scenario play out? Because it increases the number of variables and therefore the complexities that somebody like you will have to focus on 24 hours a day.
I think this question is not a very easy one to answer. You've gotten too many things in this. And,
Indeed.
I agree with what Maria said about, you try to adjust your risk by going in for multi-cloud. I completely agree with Google Saab on, transferring your loads, and you shift your, you go to them because of business, because of agility. Now, I completely do not agree with you when you say that we move the workloads. It is not workload alone, but going back to what Mr. Bogle said was moving the business there. So it could be workload, it could be services. Now, if you look at the IT offerings of the clouds, I think another 20 years, they will stop serving servers as such. Okay,
True.
because everything is moving into services. The cloud guys are creating services out of anything that is being used repeatedly. Okay. Uh, so it is not exactly a workload transformation, it is transformation of the business into the cloud. Okay. Now it could be done because of services, it could be done because of transition of application. Lift and shift clouds are failing, they're not working. You have to do modernization when you go to cloud. Now when you go to the cloud, there is a huge amount of difference when you look at it from a security standpoint.
True.
It is not your on-prem security. The mindset and the way cloud is architected is different. If you understand that concept, it is easier and better to do security on the cloud. But you need to understand that game a little better. You need to understand how the services are working, how the transitions, how the data flows are happening within the cloud and outside the cloud. What are the components? There are n number of smaller components which are available, and each needs to be configured in the right way to ensure that you deliver your things in a secure manner.
Interesting. And I do certainly thank you for correcting me there, because that's exactly what I'm bringing to you, Mr. Patel. Amit spoke brilliantly, and so did Tejveer. And before that, you spoke about the whole concept of modernizing the business. In that kind of a scenario, what is your prescriptive guidance to a new generation of IT leaders, security leaders, transformation leaders, digital leaders, in how to approach the convergence of technology when they look at business modernization? Because the risk is the possibility of trying to throw technology at everything.
So, Arjun, I think when I spoke about the best of the breed, when we talk about running, especially when we say that, yes, the risks are you're running multiple service providers. So, hybrid is to say that you are operating on a private, public, on premise, mixed sort of scenario. So, as a CIO, you know what you're recommending to your company, you're recommending to the board as a short term, long term approach into how you are doing it. So I think to do best is to look at a strategy which is going to be aligned to a situation, right? So for an example, when you run, say, a mailing services, you know it's operating on a public cloud infrastructure, and I think that's said and given. People are operating on a cloud environment. Second comes your ERPs that you operate on, and which are the ERPs which is in line of your business. So obviously you will not run one module on another cloud service operator, another one. You will consolidate, run on one, right? So what I have done is that specifically to contain this situation, I have chosen my industry segments as in supply chain running on a hybrid situation. So they are not interrelated or affected. But Amit basically clarified one particular point, and I think this is very important for all of us, is that you continuously run on a hybrid situation. What are you going to do on the data? How are you going to collate work on the data science part? Which is, I think today, every CIO's dream plan is to look at business intelligence. You're talking about planning, you're talking about marketing information, social media, which is coming on a platform, which is going to be really relatively very important for you and your business to succeed. So I think that is an area which is going to be one of the biggest point as a CIO to concentrate on. And probably that should be part of your game plan as to how you operate. Because see, today, I am moving to a financial management system which is completely on a SaaS-based platform. Completely. And there is a great amount of advantage towards it. Indeed. If you look at it, functionality, infrastructure, it's like I run with me alone and a service provider. That's it.
So true.
See, I think these are some of the things which are coming up, and which company will not go and adopt this?
So true.
I think it's a question.
Tejveer, your views on this? I don't even need to ask the question. The richness and the authenticity of the conversation itself is brilliant. What are your views on the whole concept of modernization?
See, I couldn't disagree more. Uh, Having said that, I think everybody talks about data being the new oil.
Indeed.
What it really means, and I need to be very, very cautious about what I'm stating because of the limited authority that I may have to speak on the subject. Uh, Content today is the king and is the sunrise industry. Without content, there is no delivery, there is no deliverance per se. And if anybody says that, yes, we have a foolproof or we have a platform whereby my entire content is getting aggregated and I'm generating and churning useful information out of that content and creating a product or a service out of that, and then going to the market and monetizing it, I think we are trying to fool ourselves. We are way too early in that scenario, in that stage. And I'm not just talking about us as an enterprise, I'm talking about the industry at large.
The ecosystem at large, for sure.
I think what we need to do, we need to go back to the drawing board and see, can we create an architecture or a platform which will provide the opportunity to integrate these disparate systems, whether it's a SaaS platform, whether it's a PaaS platform, the data being generated from a particular business or a B particular business, can we look at an aggregation of that data first of all? Then can we identify those business KPIs or drivers which will help us to generate useful information out of that data, which may become I would say, the fundamentals for monetization of that content. I think that strategy, the day we are able to transform our business objectives and relate that to that content driven monetization strategy, I think that would be the key.
Interesting. Interesting. Amit, your views on that, please.
So just a month into this company,
Indeed.
and there is a lot of work happening in this space.
Okay.
There are, so these are this is a specialist company which deals in this space, and uh, they are looking at data, app, and analytics put together. So putting AI ML along with the data space, and working on multi-cloud. I will not say hybrid cloud, but absolutely multi-cloud environment. So this is the space that we are in. However, I will talk from a security standpoint here.
Indeed.
And there is a lot of buzz happening, as Tejveer said, that yes, if we are able to identify these drivers, so there is a lot of work going on, which is trying to create the awareness and trying to create the drivers into moving in this direction. uh, but the security element comes in is, theoretically speaking, it is more so from a privacy standpoint, and second is obviously the assurance that the security brings in. So the theoretical term is privacy by design, but it looks at the complete gambit of uh, acquisition of the data, legal usage of the data, uh, storage of that data, disposal of that data, and data management while the whole application or that service is provided to the user. So when we talk about this, uh, the cloud services are instantaneous.
True.
So it's a nightmare. If you look at it, you pump in some data from somewhere into that service, you generate value out of it, and then you discard that query altogether. Okay, so the results are only stored. If you want to go back to the processing, you will not find it.
True.
So a lot of elements on keeping these services authentic, keeping this data flow, data direction correct, and leveraging the values again. So it's a very, very interesting and tricky field that the companies are doing, and the CIOs are moving in that direction. But the concepts, first principles still continue to remain same. Access control, testing of your systems. Only thing is the game is different. The services on which you are working is different. but a different game, as I've spoken earlier, on the cloud-based services rather than the lift and shift activity.
No,
Exactly.
very true. Because one of the questions that I also had, and this has come from analyst after analyst firm, where they said that a lot of public cloud journeys that were undertaken a few years back were perhaps ill-conceived, not completely thought out, made more to keep up with the Joneses. Maria, from that point of view, how do you see the evolution of a repatriation of services, applications, and data, and so on and so forth, now being brought either on-prem or on a private cloud kind of a thing, kind of syncing up with what future business outcomes are desired?
So, Arjun, a very right question. And my approach with business would be a product driven approach. See, everything is a product as a delivery, right? When you talk about whatever you call it, whether you call it hosting a particular application on cloud setups, you're looking at security build up, you're looking at backup recovery. So, when you talk about evolving a product and delivering a product, whatever platform you're doing it, you have to get it right, right? I mean, that is something as a basics that we do. And in today's time, one of the biggest problem that every cloud service provider was looking at a question, man, is the exit. I think that was one of the biggest point of view. And the other part is which Amit explained is the security point of view. I will come to that also. But when you sign up with a service provider, at the back of the mind, whether it is 1%, 2%, or 10%, you are saying that if I have a problem, how do I exit? and and I feel that over a period of 5 to 6 years, I've been doing cloud journeys. The exits have become much more easier to handle than the earlier times.
True.
And that I would feel for security products also. Today, if one security product is not working, you can go ahead for another one. And overnight, you can deploy it in your network. I mean, there are multiple ways that people can do it, and we have done it. But I think that particular point of exit comes into my mind as a big point. Product as a delivery has to be there. How you deliver your project internally, it has to be delivered on the hybrid platform. I think that is going to be a strategy. If you think about it as a CIO, I think that is what you will work towards.
Interesting. Tejveer, your views on this?
Once bitten, twice shy.
No, because I also ask you this because you were one of the very, very earliest movers on cloud transformation.
So that's why I was just still trying to figure out as to how to counter Mehriyar, because I truly believe there are certain products or services where you don't have a choice but to go with a public cloud. And definitely these guys have evolved over a period of time. Last 3, 4 years, 5 years, they have actually come about. And I think in the long run, my personal belief is, basis my personal experiences, limited experiences for the last 2.5 decades, go with the partner who is delivering you almost about 90% of what is being required. The balance 10% has to be customized. And the moment you customize it, I think the exit becomes much more easier. Because end of the day, that customization will also ensure that there is further skin in the game of the service provider as well.
So true.
I think somewhere that was missing earlier. And Mehriyar, to your point, which is very valid, 7 years ago, I think nobody was in that mind frame as well to accept or acknowledge or even appreciate what was being offered by these service providers. Today, I can proudly say that yes, we have a very front-end business-facing application which has been on the cloud, public cloud, for last 5 years now. And Touchwood, we are very happy the way we managed the entire customization for not only our front-end team but also the back-end team. The same product, 2 different customizations. And while yes, we have faced challenges around skill, enhancing those skills within the team, but then managed services partner, I think they play a very important role. And by virtue of that, that combination of the OEM, the managed services, and the internal skills and the core architecture team or the technology team that we have, along with the business, I think that was the ideal combination. And that's seen the success of such projects.
Do you therefore totally negate the benefits of also bringing in some of the data or the apps or the services or the workloads in-house in a private orchestration? Do you?
I never said that, Arjun. See,
It's
I
my
just mentioned
job
one
to.
aspect of it. So, and parallelly, while we were doing all of this, we also created our own private cloud.
I remember that.
We moved various workloads on that private cloud. So, it goes parallel. Today we are at a stage where we can't wait for internal teams to start delivering and put workloads on a private cloud. If a partner is willing to do that within hours, why not?
Why not? So true.
Okay, because see, the total cost of ownership comes out much lesser for me.
True that.
From a governance perspective, if I'm able to ensure that data is secured, my GTM, the business expectations are taken care of, my entire legal issues are taken care of, my IP rights are taken care of, I don't have a problem in going to a public cloud.
Very true.
And of course, hybrid will be there. It has to be there. It has both of these boats have to run parallelly.
Which is why, Amit, if I were to ask you, like, and you like in your first articulation so brilliantly and supremely said that, you know, it's about so much more than just data, but it is equally true that anything that you touch today in an enterprise kind of scenario is generating tons of data to the largest degree. And it is perhaps in a corollary of sorts equally true that we are perhaps not even scraping the surface of it. In that kind of a scenario, what is your prescriptive guidance to a new generation of IT leaders and security leaders on what is the data to protect and what is the paradigm that they should approach it with?
Okay, so let me start by echoing what Marier sir said about aligning for a particular situation or a product. Okay, once you are aligned, uh, that is the direction that you want to pursue. However, the data analytics space will give you inputs on your data, or rather, let me rephrase that question. When you go to a data, you go to data with certain questions.
True that.
Okay, that these are the questions I want answered. In the analytics space, you get more answers to the questions that you have found. You can actually generate questions, okay, with the amount of data which you will never interpret. Some vague things that people do more airline booking on a Tuesday evening from 4 to 7. Okay, you would never figure that out unless you say if you have questions or you don't have questions. See, earlier days we used to say workload pay, we have from 10 to 5 we have maximum workload, then it reduces. So even on cloud it comes to this. But if you take all the logs and you dump them into the analytic situations, solutions, you will come to answers that you have not even asked the questions.
Ask the questions for.
Okay, so that is what is more interesting in the analytics space. Now, that was one of the reasons that pulled me into this direction as well, because a very, very exciting field on the data. So usage of data, or when you said you've not even touched, that's a truth, because even in the security world, we generate tons of data.
True.
How much are we creating alerts for? It requires a lot of customization, as Tejveer also said. A lot of customization is required. So if I get a partner to do this, I want to be more inquisitive in saying, can you give me this, can you give me this? Ask for vague things that you want to. Okay, do not ask for standard things, and then push the, if you have a good partner, push the boundary, so that you come to beautiful conclusions about your own data, rather than having predefined questions and asking for answers.
Oh, very true. It's classically like, and if I'm getting it right, reach for the moon and perhaps you'll even get the stars.
Exactly.
In a manner of speaking.
Exactly.
So true. Mariar, how do you look at the overall security paradigm in a multi-cloud, hybrid cloud kind of a orchestration pan out? And what are your critical imperatives that you follow, given your vast experience that you'd like to share with the audience?
So Arjun, I think Tejveer and Amit put a lot of points both on data and security. The other point which is important on a hybrid cloud setup is one of the basic principle of shape up or ship out.
True.
कि सर्विस दे रहे हैं आपको, सर्विस को बेहतर बनाना पड़ेगा, and you will have to compete, right? I think when we go and compare a private service provider against AWS services, and then we really need to orchestrate the whole setup,
True.
as you rightly mentioned. I think some of the things that we'll have is a comparison, right? Between two
Absolutely.
service providers and NEC. And I think security, as you rightly mentioned, is one of the basic requirement of your signups when you go and engage. And I think that is something that you need to tick off, certify if need be, to see that you are running on the right security setup.
So
The
true.
second thing is the earlier engagements that you've had for cloud service providers have to be relooked at, especially in the context of a security. And I think, see, what happens is normally a large corporate, whatever is signed up 4 years, 5 years, 6 years back, we don't go and revisit them. You know, we sleep over it, and then ultimately, जब भी problem होता है उसमें जाके देखते हैं कि oh, भाई, what happened? Oh, we might have ignored certain points because see, today technology is running at a very high pace.
Very true.
And alone a CIO cannot do things, right? He has to collaborate, work with the like-minded service providers who are experts in those domains. Use them. A corporate will never tell them that you don't use services, right? You can go and very well tie up with those services who are experts in their domain, and they will suggest you a roadmap for effective implementation. And that holds true for security as well.
So true.
And that will not be your plain vanilla firewall setups or your endpoint protection. I think, Arjun, that has to be discussed at a big level of,
Because threadbare, really, isn't it?
yeah, I think that my suggestion is that pay equal and enough importance to these levels of security that are going to be very important, because the first person that gets pointed out who is the CIO and the CISO.
Indeed, indeed.
If it is working well, nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
If it goes down, it is a nightmare to us.
It is, in a manner of speaking, the term insurance of sorts, isn't it?
And
But
the
gentlemen,
DPO
I do have a view.
For a change, the DPO as well.
The DPO as well. Gentlemen, I have a view on the clock. I know you've got schedules ahead. I've got 5 minutes on the clock. And as fascinating a conversation as this has turned out to be, Tejveer, I come to you. I want to come to you with a cliche, is that, well, many folks around the globe have said the whole concept of hybrid cloud orchestrations helps foster an acceleration of innovation. What's your take on that? It is true to a certain degree, perhaps, but what's your expanded take on that?
Very, loosely abused term,
Exactly, cliche.
See, it's all in the, it's a culture for me. Okay, when people talk about innovation, I think it's part of the overall organization culture, how you treat your people. I'm a very, I'll go back to the roots, the basics. You treat your employee well, you generate or ignite some level of passion in that employee will be responsible for churning out, bringing out innovations and evolution every now and then. The person will stick to that organization throughout his entire professional journey. And we have seen that in our enterprise today. We have, resources who join in as a assistant to an editor, and they actually retire as an editor. Just imagine the entire life cycle, and throughout that period, they would have come up with various innovations. And proud to say that, yes, we promote that culture. whether it is, related to a hybrid cloud or whatever you may call it. Even these guys are innovating in their own form or shape, but it's the culture which is bringing about that, thought process, that change, that innovation. And why is it required? Again, innovation is all about how you can meet the expectations of your customers, your consumers, your own internal employees, and your shareholders in a much better manner.
So true. So true. Amit, I have a question for you. Again, this is very loosely used and perhaps quite the cliche, so don't throw something at me, please. This race for scale and agility, two terms that we've heard over the last 24 months, have they led us to uncharted routes and journeys that have perhaps left us exposed to security paradigms that could have been avoided in a more sure-footed manner?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, scale and agility were built for products and applications, okay, for increased customer base, for increased traffic into your systems. Uh, Now, there have been misuse as well.
Yeah, so true.
I can create, I can use the scale and expansion of my infrastructure to conduct attacks on somebody. Um, you know, I can create that infrastructure for mining, coin miners. I can use that infrastructure and somebody else's after hacking into that. I'm not saying I'll create my own infrastructure for this. So you can use that infrastructure for cracking passwords or doing heavy load stuff. I can use that infrastructure and not me. Okay, guys, let me rephrase. So not
We
me.
completely agree. Hypothetical, Amit.
So that infrastructure can also be used for storing stolen data before people ask for ransom. Okay, so there are enough misuses for that. Uh, but the concept goes back to the base principle, the scale, the agility, the expansion. They can be used for any purpose, good or bad. Now that depends on the hand of the user,
Okay.
and the controls that you put in place to avoid such kind of scenarios. So
So true. Couldn't agree more. And Mariar, in conclusion, another cliche that I'd really like you to expand in maybe a couple of minutes. The ability to drive disruption at scale, or craft disruption at scale, another term that's been very often touted over the last 24 months. With the overall scheme of how you've expanded your narrative on, the hybrid cloud orchestration, do you feel disruption at scale in a vastly redefined marketplace of sorts is a reality?
So I think I will speak in the context to the logistics and supply chain industry. And a lot of our backbones and for any industry that we cater to or serve to are looking at game changers. And that is what you call disruptors.
True.
Right? And so is the Indian government context in terms of supply chain and logistics. The way we do business today, the way we operate with regulatory authorities, customs, liners, and airlines, especially in terms of cargo operations, these are dynamic changes.
Indeed.
What is surprising to note and very important for all of us is that today India has become a big story.
It is.
And every company, whether large or small, has an advantage to break through. See, earlier these startup examples were not there. I would call they are advantages for us. Today, if a large enterprise wants to work with the big five or the big IT companies, they had them. So they had the collaboration and they could deliver. What about the medium and small term enterprises?
So true.
Today they have the startups. I think there is a great amount of synergy and advantages towards disruption. And I think if you look at it clearly in terms of the late starters in the supply chain and logistics, the answer comes by itself.
So true.
I will not name them, for the.
Of course.
So even just to add, Arjun, if you see the life of a company, uh, when you take the benchmarks of 1950s to what you do today,
Great.
life of companies has come down drastically, and the people who stayed in your top indices of your markets, they have changed. The startups, are getting onto this, the technology companies, and they are bringing different so much of value,
So true.
and they are disrupting the entire ecosystem.
So, Arjun, one point which I want to make is learn from others, right? We
Yes,
continuously keep
absolutely.
on learning from others.
So true.
I mean, there is no reinvention required there.
Correct.
If you learn the best and the quickest, you can be in the market first.
Couldn't agree with you more.
I think when you think like a startup, your ideas themselves are transformational.
So true.
True. True.
Thank you. But that gentleman has been nothing short of fascinating. I am truly, truly grateful. Thank you, Tejveer. Thank you, Mr. Patel. Thank you, Amit. It has been
Thank
a
you.
privilege.
Bye. See you, Tejveer. Bye,
Pleasure.
Arjun. Bye,
Thank you.
Amit.
Bye bye.
Pleasure.
And for the audience, stay tuned. That's all from us for now. We'll be back with the next segment in just a moment.
Thank you very much, Maria, Amit, Tejveer, and Arjun for sharing those gems of insight. Thank you for sharing an inside out perspective from industry around why and how multi cloud orchestration and optimization is the need for acceleration to value and the role of data in modernizing workloads. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, time now for our next segment on unlocking innovation. For this one, I'd like to welcome Mr. Vinod Nair, Storage Business Head, Channels, the South and East at Dell Technologies, who's in a conversation with Mr. Arjun Vishwanathan, Chief Knowledge Officer, Strategy. Over to you, Arjun.
Hello and welcome back to this segment of what is truly beginning to become a very, very interesting and fascinating set of conversations around accelerating value with optimization and innovation with hybrid cloud orchestrations. To talk to me about the OEM ecosystem, the infrastructure and the vendor ecosystem, and how that will carry on the needs, requirements, and the flexibilities for Indian industry. Please join me in welcoming KP Vinod Nair, Storage Business Manager Channels, South and East for Dell Technologies. Vinod, welcome. Delighted.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Arjun. And thank you very much for giving Dell Technologies this opportunity to speak to you.
Oh, indeed, sir. Vinod, I would like to directly get into the picture, which is the whole concept of multi-cloud. At Dell Technologies, how are you seeing this entire orchestration play out, and where do you see the opportunities really for organizations that are progressing on the multi or the hybrid cloud journey?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this question. First of all, yeah, I mean, you're very right. I mean, a lot of these, a lot of opportunities today for for various organizations to, go and acquire or have the services of multiple public cloud services and private cloud, and, setting up an infrastructure which takes care of the hybrid requirement, the infrastructure requirement, and, setting up of cloud. So from the perspective of, agility and, scalability, I think it's very, very important that, one is able to, like we were talking about orchestration just now, orchestrating and integration of the legacy infrastructure is very, very important. In fact, that's exactly where the Dell Technologies comes in. As you're aware that in data centers we have multiple hardware from different vendors. Then you have various types of hypervisors from different organizations. And then on top of that, these hypervisors have their orchestration layers. And then today we have organizations who have multiple public cloud services. They have their own private cloud services, and all these public cloud services and the private clouds that you set up in the organization today, they have their own orchestration layers and management tools. So from the perspective of cloud, there's a lot of actually complexities which have been created today in the organizations. You have multiple management consoles, multiple orchestration layers, and tools that we have from private and the public cloud service providers, and also of course This has resulted in siloed cloud assets. You have this operational silos, etc. So managing infrastructure, a lot of times, actually, people spend a lot of time trying to manage this infrastructure instead of using it. So in our opinion, we think that, it's very, very important that, IT-driven approach to optimize the control, the speed, security, and scalability in cost, which is what we are looking at, needs to be, undertaken. And from the Dell Technologies multi-cloud platform, or the Cloud One strategy, as we call it, what we propose is that, the organizations should have a consistent application fabric, which means that you develop an application once, then you should be able to run it across various cloud infrastructure. That's the point number one that we propose. Number two is that, there should be consistent infrastructure fabric, which enables you to, port your applications, have single management plane for your cloud native and monolithic applications. So this is very, very important. The underlying, the infrastructure should be consistent. And number three is that we talk about is, or we, in fact, we would suggest is that an organization should look at having a consistent data fabric, which means that you run your intelligence services from anywhere on the cloud without compromising the control on the data overall. So what we in our vision, our vision is primarily for a multi-cloud environment where your infrastructure and operations are consistent across all environments, allowing the freedom to place your workloads wherever it makes more sense for the organization. This is where we stand as far as the cloud and multi-cloud is concerned.
Yes, but Vinod, help me take a step back here from the perspective of industry, and equally from the perspective of Dell Technologies. When you go consult with organizations across sectors and advise them to move into a multi-cloud or a hybrid cloud kind of an orchestration, what are clearly the business metrics or the business opportunities that you are advising them being the foundation for such hybrid cloud orchestration, sir?
Yeah, of course. I mean, when we talk about the, our one of the most important things that we like, in fact, your first question itself, is the base for our discussion when we speak to a customer, where we emphasize on, trying to keep the consistent infrastructure and, consistent application fabric. And then, of course, we talk about the data consistency or the data fabric, which should be consistent. And as far as the business opportunities are concerned, we very clearly we are all looking at trying to ensure that we are able to reach our customers with a better control and with good speed and flexibility and security of the data, and trying to scale as and when the business requires, and trying to control the cost. So some of these business needs, or the which an organization or a customer is looking at, we try and address with our suggestions that we have.
So would you be able to take an anecdotal sector or a hypothetical sector to be able to let this wonderful audience that's tuning in today help us understand those business metrics or KPIs that are clearly and positively impacted in a strategic manner with the whole multi-cloud orchestration?
Yeah. So for example, I mean, let's look at IT companies. I mean, that's a very classic example, actually, if you ask me, wherein we have organizations, wherein a lot of these projects come in. And when the projects come in, the customers have a certain set of requirements. They will come and tell you that, they would want to have an application on a certain environment platform, and it should be running on, maybe, Windows, or, they give you specifications, and then the development teams get into, various modes of development of applications. So what primarily happens is that when these project teams need infrastructure, they go to the IT manager, and the IT manager says, okay, fine, you want the infrastructure. There are multiple ways of getting an infrastructure today. So the first question he goes and asks is, when do you want this project to kick off? And generally the project teams would come and say that we want to kick off immediately, ASAP, etc., etc. So what happens is that the IT manager looks at what is the infrastructure that he has got with him and what is the requirement of his project teams. And then, he decides to give them a certain set of infrastructure. So there are times then we have the IT manager has two choices. First question comes to him is whether does he have the enough hardware in place for, let's say, servers or storage, etc., in place for his project teams, number one. And if he does not have, can he buy and how much time will it take for it, the delivery, etc., etc. If the delivery takes a longer time, then what he does is he looks at what is the kind of virtual infrastructure they can provide to them. So let's say, for example, he's got a virtual, enough, they have, let's assume that the organization has got multiple public cloud services. These company, the team member or the IT team goes to the project team and says, listen, the infrastructure, we can give it to you on the cloud. We can spin it off the virtual machines and your requirements, etc. immediately. Says, let us know when do you want to start off. So what primarily happens is two things. One is that either IT can spin off the virtual infrastructure which is required, or what they do is that they go back to the project team and say, listen, we have already allocated to you. Please go into the orchestration layer and choose the infrastructure that you're wanting. Right. So depending upon the situation, let's say the project team goes into the orchestration layer and it picks up the infrastructure that it is wanting, and then automatically and once they spin the virtual machines and put their applications, etc., and start developing and start using the virtual infrastructure, the billing, etc., starts for these organizations, right? So, and if they need more requirement, they are able to instead of, they could also burst off, or they could go to from their hardware in the DC, in the hardware, they could burst off and pick up some infrastructure from the public cloud services. So the broad point is orchestration layer is the key, and that is where the whole story begins, and the more you enable your project teams, especially in IT companies where they enable the IT project teams to pick up the infrastructure, bill it out as and when required, and will keep the billing track, keep those reports generated, how much they consumed, how much they used, how much of consumption was done, etc., and the cost, etc. So this is a very typical example which happens that I think all of us are aware of this, and that's where it matters, because an organization will be using multiple public cloud services, having different orchestration layers, and and spinning virtual machines of different types, especially the infrastructure as a service, and then trying to keep a track, etc. So therefore, it becomes very, very important to keep a control of the complete infrastructure of your DC or your enterprise, and keep a tab of how much is getting consumed and how much is getting, used, etc., etc. So actually, this is quite a, not as simple as it sounds, but then there are solutions in place, and we advise our customers to keep consistent, infrastructure fabric, consistent application fabric, and keep a control on the data which they have, which is very, very critical to them.
No, but that is indeed very forcefully and powerfully articulated, Vinod. Because my question, therefore, also is, in a sense of the whole term of multi-cloud orchestration, which is largely a journey by itself and perhaps not a technology in itself, how do you think organizations should plan their workload strategies to cater to an increasing demand for efficiencies from line of business leaders, manufacturing, retail, supply chain, healthcare? I mean, you name it.
That's a very, very good question. In fact, that's a superb question. Actually, it takes a lot of time for organizations to decide what kind of application should go on cloud and where it should be, whether it's a private cloud or a public cloud. So we believe that every organization is unique, and therefore the workload placement strategy for organizations should also be unique. So that is something which we strongly believe in. Now, to determine where to run your workloads, whether it is on-premise, in the public cloud, or private cloud, or a hybrid mix, remains actually a top challenge today for most of the IT leaders. We think that application lifecycle plays a key role in workload placement strategy. So the applications lifecycle. So let's start with, let's say, development. In development, some of the key priorities are speed and flexibility. So for speed and flexibility, the infrastructure model could be public cloud infrastructure as a service. So number two part of lifecycle management or the application lifecycle is ramp up. Now, the key priorities for ramp up is that you should be able to scalability and agility. So there, the infrastructure, in our opinion, infrastructure model, in our opinion, should be a public cloud infrastructure as a service. The third application lifecycle point is optimization. So, and where the key priority when you optimize the security and the cost saving. So in our opinion, the infrastructure model there should be on-prem private cloud. And last but not the least for lifecycle is scalability. But the moment we talk about scalability, the key priority is how do we burst what is the kind of data protection that we're looking at, what's the disaster recovery that we have. Therefore, the infrastructure model should be hybrid cloud. So from our point of view, life cycle management of an application is one of the key, in terms of placement, workload placement strategy.
Indeed.
The number two is where do we place the mission critical applications? So mission critical applications, for example, you have business applications on which your organization depends. You have engineering applications where a lot of IP exists. Then we have similarly data analytics. These are the applications which, in our opinion, should be kept on-prem. Now, there's one statistics which we would like to, highlight to you by IDC. IDC came out with a white paper, where the topic was workload placement separates winners and losers. So one of the points which we would like to highlight to you here is the top reasons why an hybrid organization choose to run business applications on-prem. So there was a survey which was conducted, and 40% of the hybrid organizations said that on-premise IT infrastructure is more secure. That's the statement. Number two, 27% of them said that the workload is considered mission critical to business. Therefore, they feel that the application should be on-prem. And the third part is 27% of them said that the workload has been historically running on premises. Therefore, they felt that the business application should be running on premise. So that is something. So this is just an example.
Fascinating. Truly, the multi-cloud journey is one that truly promises to be one of the keywords or critical imperatives in the connected and digital economies that we are in, where I think the ability for organizations to adopt multi-cloud orchestrations will certainly lead to hyperspeed and hyperscale. But thank you, Vinod. It was delightful speaking with you. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Arjun. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the audience, that was I, Arjun Vishwanathan, in conversation with Vinod Nair from Dell Technologies. Stay tuned with us and we'll be back in just a second.
Thank you very much, Vinod and Arjun, for that engaging and encouraging discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you found today's webinar on accelerating value, optimization and innovation with hybrid cloud informative and useful. With that, it's a wrap. I would request you to please take a few moments of your time and fill in the feedback form. We'd love to hear your suggestions, as they will help us enhance the structure, content, and delivery of our conferences. We thank you all once again for joining us on behalf of Dell Technologies, Improve Micro, and Strategy, and look forward to welcoming you at our upcoming conferences. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy the rest of your day ahead.